The sharp, grating sound of tires crunching over gravel sent a chill up my spine. I knew that sound. I knew what it meant. For the past week, I had watched in silent rage as more and more cars appeared on my land without permission, without a single word, as if I didn't even exist. My family had owned this property for decades. It was ours. And yet, these entitled neighbors were treating it like their personal parking lot, like I was the outsider. But today, as I stood by my window, fists clenched, I saw the final straw. A brand new luxury SUV. It wasn't just parked haphazardly like the others. It was sitting right in front of my garage, blocking me in. The gall, the audacity, the sheer disrespect made my blood boil. I grabbed my jacket, stormed outside, and walked up to the car, ready to have a polite but firm conversation, until I saw something that made my jaw tighten. The car's engine was off. The doors were locked. Whoever had left it there had done so with zero intention of moving it any time soon. I spun around, scanning the neighborhood, my heart pounding with frustration. Then, as if on cue, a woman in a designer coat, one of the Karens from down the street, stepped onto her porch, her steaming cup of coffee in hand. She saw me staring at her car. She smirked. That was it. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a mistake. It was a challenge. Love seeing entitled people get what they deserve. Subscribe for more crazy stories like this. I took a deep breath, keeping my anger in check, and walked up to her house. "Hey, is that your car blocking my garage?" I asked, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. She took a slow sip of her coffee, deliberately dragging out the moment, before flashing a condescending smile. "Oh, yeah. The street was full, and, well, you have all that empty space just sitting there. Thought I'd use it, like it was hers. I need it moved," I said, my voice tight. "It's private property." She rolled her eyes, sighing dramatically. "Oh, come on, don't be difficult. We're all neighbors here. You weren't even using that spot." I stared at her in disbelief. "That's not the point." "Well, I'll move it later," she said with a dismissive wave. "I have a friend coming over, and I don't want to lose my spot on the street. You understand?" I absolutely did not understand. "Move it. Now." Her smirk wavered for a split second, but then she crossed her arms, shaking her head like I was some unreasonable landlord she had to deal with. "You're seriously making a big deal out of a parking spot? That's kind of petty." Petty? This wasn't about a parking spot anymore. This was about respect. I had been patient. I had ignored it when the first few cars started appearing, telling myself it was just a one-time thing. I had looked the other way. Not anymore. "Last chance," I said, stepping forward. "Move it, or I will." She scoffed, looking at me like I had just suggested she hand over her firstborn child. "Oh, please. What are you going to do? Call the police over a car?" I held her gaze, letting the silence stretch. Then, without a word, I pulled out my phone. The smirk dropped from her face. "You wouldn't—" I raised an eyebrow. She scoffed again, but now there was uncertainty in her voice. "Fine," she muttered, stomping back inside. A few minutes later, she came out with her keys, grumbling the whole way as she moved the SUV a few feet down the street. I exhaled slowly, but I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot, because the next morning, there were even more cars. And this time, they weren't just parking on my land. They had set up a full-blown gathering. Folding chairs, coolers, music blaring. They were having a party on my property. That was the moment I stopped asking nicely. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, staring at the absolute circus unfolding on my land. It wasn't just a couple of cars anymore. It was at least a dozen, all parked without permission. Some were wedged onto my driveway. Others sprawled out across the gravel, completely disregarding the fact that I owned this property. But the real kicker? They had brought chairs, coolers, a goddamn barbecue grill, A group of people stood laughing and drinking, flipping burgers as if they were hosting a block party on my land without so much as a word to me. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm as I marched toward them. "Hey!" I called, my voice sharp enough to cut through the music. A few heads turned lazily, their expressions completely indifferent, like I was the intruder here. A man in sunglasses, probably in his late 40s, lifted a beer in greeting. "Hey there, neighbor. Beautiful day, huh?" My hands clenched at my sides. "This is private property." The man gave me a slow, deliberate look like he was trying to decide whether or not to even acknowledge what I just said. Then, with a casual shrug, he turned back to his conversation. My eye twitched. "Did you not hear me?" "Oh, relax," came another voice, this time from her. The Karen from yesterday. She was lounging in one of the folding chairs like she belonged there, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, sipping some kind of iced drink. "We're just having a little get-together. It's no big deal." "No big deal," I repeated, incredulous. "You don't see anything wrong with just taking over my land?" She waved a dismissive hand. "We're all part of the same community. It's not like you even use this space." I stared at her. Was this real? Were these people actually so entitled that they believed empty land automatically meant free for them to use? Another man, sitting on the hood of his car like this was his own personal festival, smirked at me. "You know, if you just open it up as a parking lot, you could make some money." I exhaled through my nose. I didn't want their money. I wanted my land back. "Get your cars off my property. Now." Karen rolled her eyes, setting down her drink. "Oh, come on. You're seriously going to throw a fit over a little friendly gathering." "A friendly gathering," I repeated slowly, looking around at the sea of vehicles clogging up my land like an unauthorized event venue. "Tell you what," she continued, pushing herself up from her chair. "How about we compromise? We'll be out by sunset. That work for you?" I almost laughed at the sheer audacity of this woman. She thought she was negotiating. "No," I said flatly. "You'll be gone in the next 15 minutes, or every single car here is getting towed." Silence fell. It was like someone had muted the entire party. Karen's lips parted slightly, the casual smugness slipping away for just a moment. Then she scoffed. "Oh, please. There's no way you'd actually do that." I pulled out my phone, dialed, put it on speaker. "City Towing, how can I help you?" Karen shot up from her seat, so fast her sunglasses nearly slipped off. "Are you serious?" "Yeah," I said, locking eyes with her. "Dead serious." Okay, let's not get crazy," one of the other men said, lifting his hands as if I was the one being unreasonable. "We'll move." The others started grumbling, but there was a sense of urgency now. The fun was over. People scrambled to grab their stuff, hauling coolers and chairs into their trunks, muttering under their breaths. Karen, though, she didn't move. She folded her arms, her jaw tight. "You can't just kick us off like this. We're neighbors. We're supposed to look out for each other." I shook my head. "Looking out for each other doesn't mean letting you steal from me." She sucked in a sharp breath. "Steal? We're not stealing. This is trespassing," I said coolly, gesturing around us. "You are illegally using my land without my permission. That's theft of space. And you know it." Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. I turned back to the call. "Actually, hold on. No. We're leaving," she snapped, grabbing her car keys so aggressively she nearly dropped them. I gave her a long, unimpressed stare as she stomped to her car. The others followed, some muttering, others sending me dirty looks like I was the villain here. One by one, they pulled out of my driveway, their little illegal gathering officially shut down. Finally, when the last car disappeared down the street, I let out a slow breath. But I wasn't stupid. They had backed off this time. But something told me Karen wasn't done yet. And I was right, because the next day, she got petty. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of metal scraping against concrete. For a brief moment, I thought it was just a garbage truck making its rounds. But as I peered out the window, my stomach clenched. Karen was back, and she wasn't alone. 4 cars, parked in a perfect, defiant row across my property. But this time, they weren't just using it as parking. They had spray-painted crude lines on my driveway, as if they had the right to mark their own parking spots. I felt something inside me snap. I stormed outside, and there she was, standing beside her car with a smug grin, sipping her morning coffee like she had won some kind of battle. "Morning, neighbor," she chirped. I stared at the vandalized ground, then back at her. "What the hell is this?" She shrugged, "Just making things easier for everyone. You clearly weren't using the space, so we figured we'd help organize it a little." I laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. "You just vandalized my property," I said, my voice dangerously calm. Karen waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, please. It's just a little paint. If it bothers you that much, just wash it off." I looked at her, at the cars, at the audacity of the situation. She thought she had won, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. I took a slow breath, forcing down my initial anger. Then I smiled. "All right," I said, nodding. "Have it your way." Karen raised an eyebrow. "See? Now you're being reasonable." I didn't respond. I had other plans. Because that night, I set the perfect trap. By the time morning rolled around, I was already awake, sipping coffee on my porch, waiting. And right on cue, Karen and her group of entitled friends pulled up, completely unaware that everything had changed. I watched as they parked in their usual spots, laughing amongst themselves, Karen leading the way with her usual smug confidence. Then, the moment they stepped out of their cars, a deep, wet squelch echoed through the air. Karen froze. So did the others. Then, slowly, they all looked down. Their feet sank into a thick, tar-like sludge covering the entire parking area. Industrial-strength liquid sealant. The kind that dries fast, sticks to everything, and takes hours of professional cleaning to remove. "Oh my God!" Karen shrieked, trying to lift her foot. But the moment she did, her expensive sandal came clean off, sticking to the ground like glue. One of the guys tried stepping backward, but his sneakers were already completely ruined, coated in the sticky, black mess. "What the hell is this?" someone shouted. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Oh, that," I said, barely containing my grin. "Just a little driveway ceiling. Decided to organize my land too." Karen spun around to face me, her face a mask of rage. "You did this on purpose." I shrugged. "Well, you're the one who wanted to improve my driveway. I figured I'd do the same." Her nostrils flared as she pointed a shaking finger at me. "You..." That's when the tow truck arrived. Her mouth snapped shut as she turned, eyes widening in horror. 4 tow trucks rolled up, one for each car, engines already rumbling, ready to haul their vehicles away. "Wait, no! You can't tow our cars!" Karen shrieked, waving her arms wildly. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and flipping the screen toward her, "I can." And I did. Displayed on my screen was the official complaint I filed with the city. Trespassing, vandalism, illegal parking, all documented, all reported. The tow truck drivers wasted no time. Hooks were attached, wheels lifted. "Move your cars or they're gone," one of the drivers announced. Karen and her group freaked out, scrambling to get into their vehicles. But the second their hands touched their car doors, they realized something. The sealant had bonded their tires to the ground. Karen let out a blood-curdling scream. "You son of a..." She caught herself, fists clenched at her sides as she trembled with rage. Meanwhile, the tow trucks kept working, lifting the cars, sticky mess and all, straight onto their beds. Karen turned back to me, her face red with fury. "You're gonna pay for this." I smiled. "Already did. The city gave me permission to repave my own property. Guess you should have checked before treating it like your own personal parking lot." Her jaw dropped. I took another sip of coffee. "Oh, and about that paint? You're also getting a bill for the cleanup. Since, it was illegal vandalism." One of the tow drivers let out a chuckle as he secured the last car. Karen stood there, helpless, watching as her car and all the others were taken away, one by one. By the time the last truck drove off, the entire area was quiet. Karen stood there, seething, her once pristine shoes completely destroyed, her expensive designer coat splattered with black sealant. She turned to me, shaking. "This isn't over." I leaned against my porch railing, giving her a slow, amused smile. "Oh, Karen," I said, watching as the reality of her situation finally sank in. "It absolutely is." Karen didn't come back that day, or the next. For the first time in weeks, my property was mine again. No cars, no loud music, no entitled people treating it like their personal playground. But I knew Karen. She wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. And sure enough, on the third day, she struck back. I woke up to an envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a legal notice, a complaint filed against me, claiming I had damaged her property, endangered her safety, and intentionally caused financial harm. I let out a short laugh. Of course she was trying to sue me. But here's the thing about entitled people like Karen. They assume they're the smartest person in the room. They act without thinking. They don't consider the consequences. So, instead of panicking, I did exactly what I needed to do. I gathered every single piece of evidence I had against her. The surveillance footage showing her and her friends illegally parking on my land over and over again. The video of her reaction when the tow trucks arrived. Screenshots of the complaint I filed first. The one proving she was trespassing. And the best part? A signed statement from the city official who had approved my driveway sealing. It was airtight, unbreakable. But I didn't just want to win. I wanted to make sure Karen never pulled this crap again. So I made a few calls. The court date came quicker than expected. Karen, of course, showed up dressed in her usual expensive, self-important way, strutting into the courtroom as if she had already won. She sat down across from me, barely sparing me a glance, her lawyer whispering something reassuring in her ear. I just smiled. The judge walked in, flipping through the case file. "All right," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Ms. Reynolds, you are alleging that the defendant caused intentional property damage, financial hardship, and undue distress. Is that correct?" Karen lifted her chin. "Yes, Your Honor. He ruined my car, vandalized my shoes, and humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood. It was a calculated attack. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Carter, your response?" I stood, calm and collected. "Your Honor, this is a case of trespassing and property violation, not damage. Ms. Reynolds and several others repeatedly parked on my private property without consent, despite multiple warnings. I provided clear evidence of this. I handed over my files. The judge skimmed through them, his brow furrowing as he reached the surveillance footage. "Wait," he said, pressing play on the video. The courtroom went silent. On the screen, Karen and her friends could clearly be seen setting up their illegal parking lot, laughing, ignoring my warnings, and treating my land like it was public property. The cherry on top? The video of Karen personally spray painting parking spots on my driveway. The judge looked up, expression unreadable. "Ms. Reynolds, do you have anything to say about this?" Karen's face drained of color, her mouth open and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's taken out of context." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Context?" She scrambled. "We were just trying to keep things orderly. If he had just let us park there, none of this would have happened." The judge let out a sharp sigh. So you're admitting to knowingly using his property without permission? Karen went stiff. Her lawyer buried his face in his hands. I stayed silent, watching as the realization hit her like a freight train. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Reynolds, not only does it seem like the defendant acted well within his rights, but I see grounds for a counterclaim. Mr. Carter, do you wish to proceed with ones? I turned to Karen, watching her squirm. Then I leaned forward and said, absolutely. Karen lost. She lost hard. Not only was her case thrown out instantly, but she was also ordered to pay damages for the vandalism, the legal fees, and compensation for trespassing. By the time she walked out of that courtroom, she owed me over $10,000. And if that wasn't bad enough, she had to sell her precious SUV to pay it. But the best part? The neighborhood knew everything. Word spread fast. People talked. Karen's reputation was in ruins. She had spent years bossing people around, acting superior, treating the rest of us like we were beneath her. Now, she was just a woman who lost everything because she thought she could get away with stealing someone else's land. And as for me, I went home that night, stepped onto my empty, peaceful driveway and smiled. Because for the first time in weeks, I could finally say, I won.